Hi everyone, I'm Danielle Byington, and in this video we are talking about John Wilmot, who is also known as the second Earl of Rochester. He was a son of Henry Wilmot, who was a loyalist of Charles II. And if you remember what I said in that longer video on the history of the 18th century and its relationship to literature, what that means in this first line here is that uh, John Wilmot's his father supported Charles II while he was going into hiding on the continent in Europe. Allegedly, he's the one who helped develop the whole plan to get a young Charles II out of England so he wouldn't be, murdered by an angry mob. Because if you recall, his father, Charles I, was executed because the people hated him so much. He's the one who has said the public hated him so much that an executioner stole a vertebra out of his spine after he was beheaded, and they used it as a salt shaker in the Tower of London. Yeah, that guy. So Charles II feels as if he really, really wants to thank Henry Wilmot. So when he does come back as the King of England, and we have the Restoration, like we talked about that term. So the monarchy is restored in 1660. When he comes back, um, and John Wilmot's father, Henry has the father of the Earl of Rochester. He passes away when John is 11 years old. Uh, John inherits that title, though, thus, this is why you have it there, the second Earl of Rochester. So he is now the second Earl of Rochester when his father passes away. But Charles II, it's like that's not enough. Your father really helped save my life, and so I'm going to award you, especially since you are so young right now, something to help you take care of yourself, an annual pension of £500, which if you go to the Bank of England's website and do an inflation comparison in years, in 1660, this is equivalent to 80,000 US dollars a year. Today, as I am recording this in the fall of 2024. So that is clearly a lot of money for most people who live in the United States. That would be a nice middle class salary, maybe even in some regions, depending on where you live, of course. If you live in a major city or not, that could even be an upper middle class salary. So if you just have this free money being thrown your way, you can imagine like some people can be responsible with it and others can't. And that is what happens with John here. Oh, and by the way, a lot of times, sometimes in the literary field, you will just hear him referred to as Rochester. That's why I have that in the title of your slide right here. So, with all this money and his father has passed away, he really lives a very wild lifestyle. If you also look back up at the top, I note that he died at 33 years old. He even described himself like he's totally aware of the rock star that he was, or that he thought he was, or that he was trying to be, maybe all of the above. He described himself as, quote unquote, the wildest and most fantastical odd man alive. And you really see some of that come out in the poem that we're talking about here, the Imperfect Enjoyment. It's also, I have a quote here of something else. He's recorded as saying in the court, this is written in the journal of another court member, this outrageous, he would just say these crazy, outrageous things. And that is maybe subsequently because of the next bullet point where he himself claimed that he was totally drunk for 5 years straight. And I just can't even imagine how that would feel. And he's but he's like writing poetry and he's writing all these like pretty interesting things, these theories, philosophy, uh, all the while. So later in the end of his life, though, right in the end of his life, he radically cleans up and he becomes just, the icon that any church movement like the Anglican Church, the state religion of England, that they would want. Like, he is the reformed sinner. But he doesn't make it much longer. And we assume this was complications from syphilis. I mean, it's probably some combination of the alcoholism and some sexually transmitted whatnot. Because boy, did he like women. You see it described even in the poem, and that very bottom line of this slide here, that he's had the virgin blood of 10,000 maids. He even describes a couple lines up from there. He describes his genitalia as the common blanking post on whom the town whores do their thing. And trying to censor this as much as possible for YouTube. So, this poem is often regarded as the most vulgar poem in canonized literature. You're probably not shocked at this point based on the couple of things I've already described, or if you've read it and you're just now watching this video. So, when collections of his work were sold, up until the early to mid 1900s, it would be something either you have to ask the the bookstore clerk or the librarian, depending on where you're at, for like maybe it's a behind the counter kind of thing, or it's like way up on a top shelf. So, like younger people can't get it and be like, tee hee hee, read things that like are inappropriate for that age group. Not that that's ever stopped anyone before, but or also these things would be sold in cellophane. That reminds me of like when I was growing up in the late 90s, some CD covers, if they had what was deemed quote unquote inappropriate, like something with maybe too much cleavage or sexually suggestive, um, those CDs, the jewel case, in seriously Circuit City or somewhere else like Best Buy, we still have FYEs, right? The CD case would be covered in a kind of bright blue cellophane. At least it always seemed like I saw the bright blue color anyways. So same with Rochester's work. Okay, so going on to actually describe what he is saying in this poem. The whole idea here is what you see in this very bottom line, he is blaming everyone but himself for his premature ejaculation. Um, when I was in grad school, that was the first time I ever read this poem, and we all thought it was hilarious. But then I remember so often I heard other students after that, like during that time and then after that, people refer to it as the premature ejaculation poem. And like sometimes I will still catch myself almost forgetting what one of the words in the title really is because I always think of it as that other nickname. So he talks about first how he is really in love with Karina. Those first four lines or so, which I have two of them here for you. Naked she lay, clasped in my longing arms, I filled with love, and she all over charms. And well, we know this isn't like this is his version of love, like for sure. But he really wants to be with her in this moment of lust, and it seems like there's an allusion to him, the way he describes her, that he has wanted to be with this particular woman, despite the 10,000 others. And he's wanted to be with Karina particularly bad, and he's finally getting his moment. But he celebrates a little too early, and now he's upset. And first he's like, okay, She did it because he's kind of blaming her body, the existence of her body next to him in bed, because he says a touch from any part of her done it. Her hand, her foot, her every looks up is something he wants to explore. And so he says, like, her whole being, her whole existence is that. And so he's blaming her. And then the the rest of the poem's entirety becomes him scolding his penis. He spends the rest of the poem talking about, like, you did this. Like, you have, when I say you, um this is him addressing his penis. You have been a common blanking post on whom all the town whores have done their thing and have had the virgin blood of 10,000 maids. But right now, you can't do this for Karina, the woman I really want, at least in this moment, like I said. And even in the final passage, thou treacherous, base deserter of my flame. I mean, this is like something you would say to a friend who has betrayed you, like a person, not your genitalia. So it's an elaborate poem of anger about his penis not doing what he wants it to do in this moment. So that's all there is to tell you about the imperfect enjoyment. Thank you for watching.